Episode 2 of the MC Mechanic Podcast, recorded on August 14th, 2022. Greetings and welcome to the second episode of the MC Mechanics Podcast. I'm Jedz, and I'm here with
Jon.
And we're just hanging out on Sunday night, catching up, trying to figure out what's going on. You know, talking about work, talking about wrenching, and you're tiling, right? That's what you're doing right now.
Starting tomorrow, we'll be tiling shower, bathroom floor.
Oh, nice. Got anything under the tree today? Any kind of projects?
Still working on trim in the house.
Yeah.
And Deb wants some fancy trim around windows and doors, so we were discussing that, making trips up and back and forth to the shop, making cuts and test boards, and finally came up with something. So
Nice.
actually, it's not standard; it's got to be special.
Right. Right, because that means it's you're more devoted, spending more time on it.
I'm trying to get just one piece of it done a weekend, even if it's killing myself on Saturday or Sunday. Just wake up Monday morning and say I did something, other than complain about my aches and pains. So
yeah, no, I hear that because I do that. I feel the same way, like when it comes to like doing the wood or like, you know, roofing or something that I don't really want to do. You know, home ownership, man, it's the best, isn't it?
it's awesome. So did you work on anything this week?
Yeah, I got I had a customer come over today and she dropped off her brand new Triumph Bonneville T100 and asked me to install engine guards for her. Because she called me and she's like, Jedz, you know, I want to get these engine guards in case I drop the bike because I'm learning. Because this is her first season, by the way. And, you know, and they're like, you know, what's a good price for engine guards? I'm like, well, whatever Triumph tells you for a price is a bad price. So let me find some guards for you, and then I will install them for you. So I found her some guards. You know, I said if they're going to be throwaways anyways, I'm going to get you one of the more inexpensive brands, because if it breaks, then we can just buy new ones and put them on. And then if you have really nice ones and then you damage them, and you'll be bummed because they'll be damaged forever. So we got the inexpensive ones, not the cheapest, but you know, they're nice chrome engine guards. They're like $50, which is actually pretty cheap. And put them on for her. So only charged her a half hour of labor. It probably took me 45 minutes, but I only charged her a half hour. And just because she keeps coming back to me, and, you know, I'm just like, you know, I think I'm getting like how you know, you're kind of like, you do your own thing. You're a contractor, general contractor, and
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth. And, you know, you want to sound fair.
Right.
I mean, right now it's fair. I mean, my rate's $50 an hour. It's like at least half of what the dealers are asking for.
Oh yeah. It's crazy what they're charging.
It's crazy, but I mean, for 4 bolts, man. I mean, I couldn't I was like, yeah, just give me $75, and we're good.
Right.
So
Great.
That's what I did. You know, not much other than that. Worked on the Dirty Bird. You know, getting the Gold Wing in the good sorts. So,
You know, we've had a Honda hybrid for years. The Element out there, it uses electric to start and it runs on gas. It's a hybrid. It's been like that.
Yeah, right. It uses a 12-volt lead acid. It's got a little electric motor in it.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, it's a cool car. It's a V6. It's a 3-liter V6, like a big engine, and it goes like a bat out of hell, but it gets like 40 miles a gallon. So I'll take it.
Wow.
So, my Subaru 2021 right now. So
Man. That's pretty good compared to my big old truck.
yeah, your van.
Yeah, it's crazy. Morgan's got a all-wheel drive Taurus that he's had for a while, and then he bought my daughter's son-in-law's Subaru Impreza, drives that. So we've been in a standoff on who's going to detail it and clean it, enlist it and sell it. And it's been sitting for a while. So hit a steering problem, and I finally got that figured out. But Deb drove it. My memory is shot. Deb drove it, I don't know, 4 months ago, because her Honda was in the shop and it overheated. And my son-in-law went over. I was gone. My son-in-law went over and brought antifreeze and put it in, and says it was just low on antifreeze, and that was it. You're fine. I said, okay. So she drove it back. Well, with the steering being messed up, it's been sitting for a while. So I finally found a shop that was an intermediate steering shaft. And so it gets fixed, and I thought, this is great. I'm going to drive it a little bit, make sure that it's okay, and we'll list it. So I go up to wonderful Taco Bell, and sitting in the typical Taco Bell long line, and right when I pull up to pay, puff of smoke comes out of the hood. It overheats right there in the lane and dumps all the antifreeze in the driveway. And I'm just blown away, like, what is going on? So I pull over and let it sit. Morgan comes up to get the food in his car, and he said, "Are you okay?" I said, I'm steaming mad too. Let me just sit here and cool off. So next door was AutoZone Advance, one of them. I bought a couple of gallons of antifreeze. I waited about 20, 30 minutes. It cooled down, took the cap off and filled it up. And when I got home and I told my son-in-law about it, he goes, "Yeah, I told you it overheated, when I fixed it before." Totally forgot about it. So obviously the thermostat's bad. And I just had so much going on. I haven't changed it. So I'm going to try and change that out this week and get that thing advertised. But when I was stuck at the fair in the tractor pull traffic, I was only 2 miles to go, and I'm in bumper to bumper traffic, and I realized I'm in the Taurus, and I thought, if this thing overheats in the middle of this traffic, but it made it. So
that's great.
So
that's hilarious.
Only
you, man. Only you.
Only me.
I'm gonna make it home. Dad's gonna love this thing. We're gonna sell this thing.
Yep.
I went to cashier's like, well, I don't see that every day.
That's right. And I had a rough week of special big box stores and customer service all week that just put me over the edge. And it never fails when you're trying to finish a job and you need something. And so I was furious about the way they were treating me, and I was trying to get out of there without sounding like an old man screaming and hollering. Get back, saying they don't know what they're doing. I get back, turns out I bought the wrong parts. I had to turn around to go back and get the right parts, and that part was my mistake. So,
oops.
It was a rough week.
I've done that before.
Yeah.
Like, I got some pads for the Suzuki GS I got. And then I realized that I'm working on a 79 and the 81 pads are different sizes. And I'm like, son of a gun. Like, gotta order more.
That's right. That's right.
So
I had a little bit of a treat this week. The bathroom job that I finished was a neighbor that I grew up with that, we were both born next door to each other and went all the way through high school. Yeah. Pretty close. And I hung out more with his younger brother, riding motorcycles and mechanical stuff more than the middle brother. And so he's not really, it's not good or bad, but he's not a gearhead. He's not a mechanical guy. His little brother is. So I thought it was really odd when I was cleaning out underneath his vanity to change out the vanity, that in his van, you find all kinds of stuff in people's vanity when you clear it out.
Right.
Inside the vanity is a compression tester and 2 spark plug wrenches.
Like, why would you have that?
He's working from home. I'm dying laughing. And he said, "What's so funny?" I said, "What is this doing, A, in your possession, and B, what's it doing in your vanity?" He goes, "I don't know. Just take it home." So I'm sure it's a cheap compression tester, but with my $200 motorcycles, I'm sure I need it to use today, right? To go along with the cheap one.
Right.
That
You'll
was
find out if
fantastic.
it works or not by the time you get to cylinder 3.
That's right. My gosh.
Yeah. Don't trust those numbers. Just keep an eye on that needle. If it's a little lower, you can go like, guess the compression's a little.
I had a cheaper one and was trying to do that on my own a couple years ago. And Craig, bless his heart, I call him up and said, here's my numbers. So he's going through the numbers and telling me whether it's good or bad and what I need to do. And
Yeah.
at the end of the conversation, he said, you did hold the throttle wide open when you did that, didn't you? I went, no, nobody said that. So he called me a few choice words, and then I went back and redid it all again. So
Right. Right.
but I don't know. It's always a treat.
Yeah.
How did you? We've shared a little bit, but how did you get started? Not only wrenching, but just riding bikes in general.
Oh, geez. Well, I've been riding for, was it 14 years now, I guess. And I got into it because I've always been kind of a wrencher. I was into cars before the motorcycles. And I guess I still am into cars because I work on anything that has engines. I just find that's a natural knack. So a buddy of mine had a Honda Passport or a Cub C70 chained to this tree, and I'm like, "What are you doing with that motorcycle? Like, what are you doing with that thing? Like, what is that thing? Like, I didn't even know. Like, I knew about motorcycles, but like, I grew up in a house where motorcycles was, talk about, that's what that's what you do when you're dumb, like that's
Right.
death trap, like you're what do they call it? What's the word? You're
Organ donator,
organ donor. And you're
yeah,
on a motorcycle, you're an organ donor.
which I am, by the way.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm pretty sure everything is in good sorts. Maybe the liver might be tough,
That's
but
right.
um, so I traded a case of beer for it because I did some work on his Nissan Pathfinder, and that's how I saw the bike because I went over and I was working on Nissan. I think it was a Pathfinder. It's like it's like a Frontier, but before they were Frontiers, they were just like Nissan pickups, and then they had the SUV. So I was working on one of those. I was doing like brake work for him, bleeding the brakes, and he's like, and I'm like, what's that thing? He's like, oh, that's just this old Honda I got from my grandmother, and it just sits out. I don't know what to do with it. So I traded him a case of beer for it, a case of Long Trail Ale.
Oh man,
Any kind of beer. It was Long Trail Ales.
that's premium.
Yeah, I mean, in Vermont,
I can't get them here. I don't want to talk about
well, I guess we're gonna have to. I guess I need to do a beer run or something. So I got it home. I got it to start the first night it was seized, so I just put PB Blaster down the intake part, let it sit overnight. It got free, and then I put, I didn't know about carbs, so I just put gas in it and used starting fluid, and it started and ran. And then that was the rest is history. I got that running, kind of, and then I was like, this is too small, and I got a Yamaha Riva scooter, 200 cc's, and I rode that all summer long. Thought it was the coolest thing until I got my Suzuki GS750, and then I was like, okay, motorcycles are the coolest. Old Japanese motorcycles are the coolest thing. So that's how I got hooked. So I think the moment I realized that I was gonna do this forever was when I had the Riva, and I was really liking the Riva, and then I got the GS, and it never ran right. And so I hired a buddy who has now passed away. His name's Bob Hudson, and he taught me a lot about how to fix things, to get things going on motorcycles. And he jetted the carbs, and he's like, there's like something different with this GS750. It's got bigger engine. He's like, there's something wrong with the cams. Like, it's not taking a stock jet. It's like, I got pods on it. It's not taking a stock jet. So I had to go with like a 900 cc jet, and it's running great. I'm like, great. And then as soon as I went down the road and I just gunned it, and I watched the tack just rev up, and I go through second and the third and the fourth, and I was like the adrenaline, like my intestines were in my throat, and like I just could look at. I remember looking at the tack and just seeing it like glowing, like I just felt like I was on cloud nine. I was like, this is awesome because it's the fastest I've ever accelerated probably ever,
Yeah.
and I was done at that point. I was like, I'm going to do this forever for the rest of my life, and I have.
Wow.
But that was what, 23 years old. So, well, yeah, 24 years old. So 14 years ago. So what about you, Johnny? Like, what was that moment when you realized when it's like, I'm a motorcyclist, I'm in this for life?
Well, we lived out by Cincinnati Airport, and it was gravel roads, and back there was never police or anything around, and the neighborhood kids got trail 70s and mini bikes and gasoline power, and mom and dad really didn't have the budget back then, and I was the youngest of four kids, so money was spread out. So
yeah,
it was killing me to watch.
You got like a hula hoop and a stick.
Yeah, that's right. Chase the can around. And I always had bicycles and stuff. By the way, I got a bicycle on Christmas when I was 9 years old, and I saw the box underneath my parents' bed 2 days before Christmas by accident. So when I went to bed, Christmas Eve, the box was still there. And my dad was not mechanical. My dad said he could twist the screwdriver twice, drop it, and cuss, and he was done. So I go into the utility room and I line up the tools that I think I'm going to need. And sure enough, my dad put the box underneath the Christmas tree and did not take it out of the box, the bicycle. So part of the gift was me putting it together. I had the bicycle together and the tires pumped up before anybody got out of bed. And Dad come in shaking his head. He goes, I knew you'd want to do it yourself. It was like, no, he just didn't want to do it. So that was where my mechanical skills kicked in. But
that is amazing. That's great.
The Turfway racetrack here, Horse Park, was called Latonia Racetrack back in the 70s. And I used to hang out with a guy that lived around the corner from there. And his buddy I also went to school with was Alan Loney, and he had a QA50 two-speed. And he would ride it all over Latonia Racetrack in the big open parking lot when it wasn't in season, because they lived on the grounds and his dad managed the place or whatever. So that was probably 72, 71, something like that. It goes way back. And I was, fifth or sixth grade, probably fifth or sixth grade. And they let me ride it. And I've ridden mini bikes with gasoline power engines, but I've never ridden anything else. And I can remember giving it the gas, going up and shifting it from first to second and then downshifting. And I'm like, this is it. I mean, the shifting gears, I'm like, this is incredible. So it took until, I was 15 years old, I think, before we finally got a bike for myself. And it was the worst bike made. It was a Indian 100 Enduro.
Indian?
An Indian 100. It had a Fuji engine on it, which was like a Japanese engine. And it lasted 6 weeks. Second gear went out, and it took 9 weeks for them to fix it at the shop. It was under warranty, and it lasted another 6 weeks and went out again. So I ended up getting another one a little bit bigger that was a joke and returning that. And then I ended up buying a used, we called it a Suzuki 200, but it was a 185 Suzuki on a TM 125 frame set up for racing. And so
a little bike with a big motor.
Yeah, I mean, it was only a size up, but
yeah,
it was sort of a Frankenstein bike, but it was the guy that worked at the Indian shop, the mechanic, that sold it to me. And I want to say $300 or something. This would have been in 76, I think.
Yeah.
And my first race.
So that'd be like $5,000 today's money.
That's right. My first race in the 200 class, he bought a brand new Can-Am 175, which was extremely fast. And I beat him the first week with his old bike, and he had just bought a brand new bike.
with that old
Yeah.
hodgepodge Suzuki, because it's a Suzuki.
Yeah. I might have got third or fourth, and he got fourth or fifth. It wasn't like I won, but
right. And that's the interesting thing about you, and that I've never done, is I never raced. You used to race. You used to enduro race, right?
Motocross. All the way
Motocross.
up to maybe 1980, I think, something like that, you know, in the Cincinnati area. So it was a lot of fun. There's really nothing adrenaline-wise that has ever matched that in my life since giving that up. I mean, just sitting on the line with 20, 30 other guys and going into a first turn wide open is, you just can't match it. The butterflies and everything else. So
right.
It's a lot of fun. But I got to the point where I realized I wasn't going to be able to buy a new bike every year like everybody else. And then there's something mentally that if you don't have a new bike every year back then, because technology was changing so much, it's like, well, I guess I'll become a mechanic. So I enjoyed working on bikes. And really, I thought I'd be on motorcycles my whole life, working on them and doing something. And so I ended up getting a job at a local Yamaha dealership in the shop. And I basically just put new bikes together. And so that's my professional motorcycle skills that I had. But what was neat was I would put the bike together and then test ride it up street and came back. And what's funny is, you joke about Triple Johnny. These triples that I mess around with, those were the bikes I was putting together and test riding up the street.
Okay.
So
this makes sense now. It's like going home.
Going home. That's right. I think I test rode a big old XS 1100 one time when I put it together, and that kind of scared me to death. That was quite a bit faster than the rest of them, but it was a lot of fun. So
that's great. So you've been wrenching on bikes for
since probably 75, 76, because I had to be my own mechanic. You know, Dad barely afford to buy the bike, and I just taught myself how to work on it. And friends.
So that's 46 years, right? Am I doing my math right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a downtime when the kids were little, you know, like you're entering in, that it kind of slows down a little bit. I usually had one bike, and then I got into fishing quite a bit, didn't ride, and then got back into it. But
right.
So when I went to Vermont is when I heavily got back into buying and trading, you know, not as much as you, but more of an interest. So,
right. Yep.
It's, I think it's the tinkering and solving the puzzle is in knowing that it's fixed when you get done. When it's not fixed, you know, you're just like, that's it. It's gone. It's out of here.
Yep. You know? Right. When you're like, you can't figure it out, you're like, I hate this piece of junk. Yeah. Like, why did I buy this thing? Because it's usually something like detrimental, like, oh, good, it's a lower end bearing is burned out, or like, I don't know, what is the worst thing I've discovered on a bike? I've discovered on and then decided not to buy it was I had a GS 650L. A guy was was selling, and it was inexpensive. It was like maybe like $500, and I was like, oh, go talk him down. And then I started out, I was like, oh boy, that is not good. That connection rod is all loose in there. So
yeah,
nope. But I don't think I've ever purchased something that was bad to the point where I'm like, $100, get rid of it. Well, cars maybe, but not bikes. I think I learned my mistake through cars.
I got to be pretty handy with the 185 Suzuki because the second gear wasn't real strong in it for racing because it was an enduro, and plus it was 2-stroke. So I was all the time with my Black & Decker drill trying to figure out how to port this thing and make it a little bit faster.
Right.
Because I was unsupervised. My dad didn't know any better, and I'm out there grinding away. But second gear went out on a race, and Monday I woke up and took it apart, split the cases, had another one, another spare motor,
Yep.
put another transmission in it, put it back together, got the bike started same day, rode it up in the yard, and second gear went out on that in about 10 minutes. And I came back and took it apart and split the cases and had it on a bench that night before I went to bed. So that was a pretty rough day. So
yeah, that's a demoralizing day.
Yeah. And and that's all with, I don't want to say junkyard parts, but just parts I had around the house trying to hodgepodge something together. Dad would buy wrecked bikes for me, and I would just, if there was a deal, and I would strip them apart. But my mom didn't know about it. My dad had this habit of playing the horses.
Yeah.
And to him, it was the mathematical with handicapping horses. So he would bet a couple of bucks, $2 to win or whatever. And then if he won, he really couldn't say anything about it because he wasn't supposed to be betting in the first place.
Right.
So I would just happen to have a motorcycle part need right after he won something big, and he'd go get it for me in cash. And so he bought this motorcycle for me for $125. And I told a couple of white lies to mom. She saw the back. What's that? I'm working on that for some guy, and I was working on for some guy. It was me. And a month later, he said, "Are you ever going to fix it?" Nah, he just gave it to me. I'm just going to use it for parts. It's just, and Dad's, sweating over in a corner thinking I'm going to call him out.
That's hilarious.
That's how most of it was sponsored, was Dad's horse betting racing. So
good. Hey, and it's funny how the universe works like that, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. It does.
Yeah, he got the handicap and solve puzzles, and I got to work on bikes and solve puzzles.
So it's interesting because you're talking about how you kind of learned at age 9, you got that bicycle and you put it together and you figure it out. It's like a puzzle to you. And I got to say, it was the same way for me because I so wanted to learn how to work on things. And my dad, he doesn't, it's it's like Chinese to him. He can't read it, and it's Mandarin to him. He doesn't understand how to work on a vehicle. Yeah. He can do oil changes and things like that. I think, remember him doing an oil cooler, and it took him all day to do it, a transmission cooler for the Pontiac or whatever. And I mean, it could be wrong. It maybe took him 4 hours, but still, it's too long. And so I didn't learn how to do anything mechanical. I've always been a big science head. I understand that things are machines, especially human things to cellular things. Everything works because of chemistry and physiology. I get that. So I learned myself. And then my stepdad, who is a fantastic mechanic, didn't have the patience for me because I mean, anyone that knows me and hangs out with me, I'm a little high strung. So
no, not at all.
Rewind that 30 years, and it's trying to get me trying to catch get my attention was trying to catch lightning in a bottle. So no one taught me nothing. So I learned everything. I didn't get into engines though. I didn't get into engines until I was in my 30s. I don't think I had the patience for it because it takes a degree of patience to work on engines and timing and stuff like that.
My problem, I guess it was my problem, was we should probably next week or the week after talk about mechanical mentors or whatever. But I asked a lot of questions. I drove people nuts with questions. And I could talk about a situation or a problem over and over. And, but I had one guy, Mr. Bohart, who had a little shop down in Hebron that was open 3 hours a night. He would come home from work and open his shop at 6 o'clock and close at 9 o'clock. And we would buy our oil and spark plugs and tubes and tires from him, and different things.
Right.
And it's a husband and wife shop. And I went to high school with his son, and he never changed the expression on his face. you didn't know if he was in a good mood or a bad mood because his expression never changed. So when you walked in, you didn't know which Mr. Bohart you were going to get. And he'd either, without changing the look on his face, give you the shop or point to the door and say, don't come back. You didn't. But for some reason, he liked me, and I don't know why, but I asked the question and he gave a response. He had a high counter, and I'm leaning against the counter. And I tell you what, his labor rate was $6.25 an hour back then. That tells you how long ago it was. Remember the big sign, $6.25 an hour. And we thought, oh my gosh, can you get this done in an hour? To us back then. But he gave a response, whatever it was, with the situation I had. And I go, well, I talked to this guy, and he said, and he was a big guy too. He takes the palm of his hand and slams down on the counter. You either go back to him or you listen to me. Make up your mind. I'll listen to you, Mr. Bohart. So he was a great guy. We sat there one time. I had a problem. None of the shops in town could fix it. Yeah. And I had a bearing in the wheel bearing in the Lovely Indian that disintegrated. So the only thing in the hub was the outer race. There was nothing in the middle. Yeah. Well, everybody had these pullers trying to pull this race out, and nobody could get it out. And when I would show up, like 4 local shops, and I was devastated. Like, I can't buy a whole wheel. So I take it to him, and he said, I got this. And I hear this Dremel tool in the background, and he dremeled through the wall of it and just barely hit the aluminum part of the hub, bent it in, and pulled it right out. Nobody else thought about that. Yeah. And he was pretty proud of himself that he figured it out. Nobody else could. Yeah. But what was funny is my dad was an accountant. So as he's in the back working, they took a little extra time to fix it because it was getting close to 9. And she said, we got to get to the accountant up the street so we could get Bill's taxes done, their son. Yeah. And my dad says, well, you got him with you? And she goes, yeah, I got him right here. And he said, well, it's probably just a short form, easy form. And she goes, well, I don't know. And he goes, well, let me take a look at it. So Dad does Bill's taxes while Mr. Bohart's fixing the wheel. And Mr. Bohart looks at Dad, looks at me, and goes, we're good, and shows the wheel to me. And we walked out. We're good. Yeah, there was a lot of bartering going on at that moment.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, the bartering is like the best way to like pay for things, I think, sometimes. Yeah. That's so cool, man.
Yeah, it's something else. But I don't know.
So it only costs $6.50 for your taxes then,
I guess. Back then I remember Dad saying $12 or $15 to get taxes done. He would come home all the time and trading something because these guys couldn't afford to pay him. One guy offered him a Cadillac Hertz that was at his property to do the taxes. I was furious. Get this car, Dad. I got to have it. I'm not putting no hearse in front of my house. I don't care. I got to have it. I got to rig it up with something. He wouldn't go back and get it. It was a big Cadillac Hertz. I was devastated. Oh, I wanted it so bad. Yeah.
A hearse. Yeah. No, Johnny, no.
Oh, man. I don't know. I've had a lot of good guys that's helped me out over the years. And we had one time on the 185 Suzuki, they switched a couple of things over the years and we didn't know it. And I used cases from another bike, put transmission, everything in. And the transmission was like a 1/16 of an inch from compressing all the way. Yeah. And we couldn't figure out why. And I took it to 2 other guys, and they're taking it apart, putting together, other racers' fathers and stuff like that, helping me out. And Stanley, he passed away a couple years ago. He was my best friend and 12 years older than me, and really helped me out every weekend going to the track and everything else. He got to looking at it. He was an excellent shade tree mechanic and carpenter by trade, but he was a good mechanic. He got to look at it. Turns out where the primary shaft went in, they put a shim, and then the next year they took it out. They put a bronze bushing in there, and the bushing was thicker than the shim. And he comes in the next morning. He worked on it all night. Comes in next morning and said, "I fixed it." And All it was the different models. One year had a bronze fitting, and the other one had a shim. So,
what one was the superior one?
I don't know which one was superior. It's just that nobody knew this case was different from that case. You know, maybe it was a 73 versus a 75 or whatever.
You just knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good. But, you know, the parts guys love us when we pull up and it's 1977 and we're trying to buy parts for a 73 Suzuki. And also I need some for a 75 Suzuki and a 77 Suzuki. And the guy's like, well, what bike do you have? It's really all the same bike. I just know which year parts came from.
I know the case is a 74. I know the frame is a 77 and the forks are a 76.
Like Johnny Cash's Cadillac, you know?
Hodgepodge. Well, you know, the thing is, like, back then it would work. You know, it worked for a while. Like, I know, like, with a lot of the old Suzuki GS stuff, like, you know, you could put 1000 stuff on 750s. I've done a 711 swap, which is a 750, and put an 1100 engine in a 750, and it fits. You know, you could do all sorts of stuff, you know, back when technology wasn't about frame restructure and fork sizes, and I don't know. I'm nostalgic for a time I never really experienced because I didn't get into bikes until I was like mid 2000s, you know. Yeah. But you know, it was
Stanley would take me to the races in his old Ford pickup truck 67 that he put motors in, and it was always primed. It was just red primer. And we went to a racetrack up in Blanchester, Ohio, which was an hour from here. And on their display was a motorcycle on top of the motocross stand that said Dirt Country or something, I can't remember. And it was a Suzuki Trials bike was on there on a wheelie on the side. So I always wanted a Trials bike, you know, to help my balance for racing and stuff. So we got talking to the guy and I said, what would it take to get that bike off the sign and put a real motocross bike up there instead of the Trials bike? And the guy said, you just get me a dirt bike, put it up there. He goes, I don't care. I'd rather have a dirt bike anyway. So I had this 125 Suzuki that I got off of a friend, and I stripped everything on the inside of the motor out so it was lighter. So it was just the outer cases and the muffler and the head, you know, and the gas tank. And I put some of the cheaper parts on there to make it as light as possible. And we drove up there, and the guy had a backhoe and put Stanley and I in the scoop, and we went up, and it was welded to the top of the stand. So I didn't know how to weld, you know, so we cut it, put the bike in the bucket, dropped it down, grabbed the other bike, put it up there, and welded it, put it on there. I think we got home at 12 or 1 in the morning, and Stanley had to go work the next day. And I wasn't working at the time, younger, and I got up the next day and changed the oil and put gas in it, and it started on the third kick.
Stop.
And I rode it. I couldn't. That's the truth. The case was cracked on the bottom where when they was welding something, they broke it. So baby welder did something, and I had a Trials bike after that. So I wondered how long that bike lasted. It was like a 74 125 Suzuki. I wondered how long that bike lasted up on that sign.
So, a while, probably. That's hilarious.
But I knew it would run because the guy said, I said, do you know any history on the bike? The guy said, oh, we rode it to the stand and shut it off and welded it to the sign. Like, really? So, yeah. It wasn't a very good Trials bike, but I did have one, and we had a lot of fun with it. And I ended up trading it to somebody for something else down the road. But, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man, you've got a history for sure.
Got a history. Yeah.
I only wish I knew you back in the day like that.
I don't know. I have a history of outrunning the Cincinnati Airport police on airport property where we would have tracks and ride on, and we knew back trails to leave the track to go, and nobody knew where we came out. So I told my mom, and she's like, you need to be careful. And I said, Mom, they're not going to catch me. And she was friends with Judge Ferguson, and she told him one time something about, oh, my son rides around, you know, sometimes hits airport property. He said, be careful. All those Cincinnati Airport police are deputized Boone County policeman and the Boone County sheriff. And I went, oh my goodness. I thought they were rent-a-cops in Cincinnati.
Yeah, no, you're out running the law, Johnny.
Yeah. So
good for you. That. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm about ran one. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
What we do in our young age is exempt now, right? Is that how it is?
Yes,
there's going to be a statute of limitations, right? Like,
sure. Wow.
You, sir, were out running cops 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Right. It was a cut in the fence in this field, and you could get to 275 Expressway, and they were building it, and it was all dirt. So we raced up and down it and raced up and down the hills, and I stopped for a Kentucky State police officer one time, and he tried to say that I cut the hole in the fence. And I said, no, it was already cut. Well, he did everything possible to say I was the one that did it. Finally gives me a warning, and I go home. So a year later, I'm working at the Yamaha dealership, and I get pulled over for doing 60 and a 45 because I'm late for work. And don't you know, it's the same state policeman.
Stop it.
He's looking at my license. He's got me in the front of the cruiser. He's looking at my license, and he's just staring at me, and he's looking at the license. And I'm like, oh, Lord, don't let him remember it was me. It was me. And he just said, and he hands me the ticket, and you could just see his eyes. Like, I know I've seen this kid somewhere before. So,
right.
Yeah.
What bike were you riding? An RD?
No, it was a dirt bike because it was the dirt trails. But I had my little MG hatchback MGB GT that was my sister's I was driving. That's another story. So
that's what you got pulled over on, was in the car.
Yeah, right.
An MG. You went an MG?
Really? Yeah, it was awesome. It was a cool little car.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Yeah, that's another mechanical story down the road. So.
Oh, I bet it's a whole like a whole novel. How to work on British cars.
That's right. That'll be for December.
Yeah, we can throw in how to work on British bikes, because I can tell you all about that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap this one up. So if you like what you see, you like what you hear, tune into us. We've got the podcast now hosted on multiple podcasts wherever you find podcasts. And Johnny, you got anything you want to end the night with?
No, I'm good. I probably talk too much, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I like listening. It's always fun to hear about this rambunctious, rebellious little person that I know exists, because I hang out with you, and you're one of my best friends. But I've got the second, third, fourth generation of that now. So
Well, when Deb first met me, she heard my version, and then she heard my mom's version. And my mom's version of me was quite a bit different, that I could do no wrong. So Deb nicknamed me Good Little Johnny. So I sign a lot of things GLJ for her, Good Little Johnny. So yeah, more of an Eddie Haskell than I am a Good Little Johnny. So.
Good Little Johnny, come on, that's really. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this one up. Have a good night, folks, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.